2024 Florida Python Challenge is officially in the books. The annual 10-day event looks to cut down the population of invasive Burmese pythons in Florida's Everglades.
Florida just released brand new footage from deep inside its swamps, and what it shows has scientists scrambling. Hidden trail cameras and drone surveys quietly running for months and just got pulled and reviewed. What they captured isn't just another gator video. We're talking unexplained die-offs, invasive species pushing further than anyone predicted, and water chemistry readings that don't match any historical record. Local biologists are calling it the clearest warning sign yet. In the next few minutes, we'll break down exactly what's in this footage, why it matters, and what it could mean for the millions of people living near these wetlands. The footage nobody expected to see. Florida's wetlands are among the most heavily monitored natural areas in the United States. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission manages more than 6 million acres of public land, and a large portion of that land is watched by hundreds of trail cameras. These cameras are spread across many different habitats, including pine flatwoods, open prairies, freshwater marshes, coastal wetlands, swamps, and grasslands. Together, these environments create one of the most diverse ecosystems in North America. Many people think of Florida as nothing more than beaches and swamps, but the reality is far more impressive. The state is one of the most biologically rich places in the country and is home to more than 4,000 identified animal species. Florida also ranks among the top states for species that are found nowhere else on Earth. One of the most famous examples is the Florida panther, a rare predator that has become a symbol of wildlife conservation in the region. For years, trail cameras have quietly captured images of animals moving through these habitats day and night. Every day, they produce thousands of photographs. The challenge is that there is simply too much footage for scientists and wildlife experts to examine on their own. Reviewing every image by hand would take an enormous amount of time and resources. To solve this problem, wildlife researchers launched the Florida Wildlife Watch Project. The program grew out of the Everglades Wildlife Watch Initiative, which began in the spring of 2024. Since then, more than 9,000 volunteers have participated by helping classify nearly 1.7 million images. People from all over the country can log in, view photographs taken by trail cameras, and identify the animals they see. This citizen science approach allows researchers to process huge amounts of data much faster than they could on their own. Because of this system, when officials announce that new footage has been released, they are usually not referring to a recent expedition into the swamp. Instead, they are talking about trail camera images and drone surveys that have finally been reviewed, organized, and analyzed after spending months in a backlog. Once the images are processed, scientists can begin to understand what is happening across these vast wetland ecosystems. Some of the recent discoveries have been extremely encouraging. One of the most important findings was the confirmation of wild-born eastern indigo snake hatchlings in the Everglades. Researchers described this as a major milestone because the species had disappeared from much of South Florida decades ago. Capturing evidence of naturally born hatchlings suggests that restoration and reintroduction efforts are succeeding, offering hope for the long-term recovery of the species. However, that positive news is only part of the story. Hidden among the same collections of newly reviewed images are signs that not everything is improving. The cameras are revealing changes that have many wildlife experts concerned. To understand why, it is important to recognize that the Florida swamps of today are very different from the swamps that existed 50 years ago. New species have arrived, old ecosystems have changed, and the balance of wildlife is no longer what it once was. Those changes are becoming increasingly visible every time another batch of footage is finally reviewed. the predator nobody saw coming. If you ask most people what the most dangerous animal in a Florida swamp is, the answer is usually the same. Most will immediately think of alligators, while others might mention the massive Burmese pythons that have become famous for spreading across the Everglades. Very few people would mention caimans. In fact, many people have never even heard of them. However, that may soon change as scientists pay closer attention to a species that has quietly established itself in one of America's most important ecosystems. The animal in question is the spectacled caiman, a crocodilian species that looks similar to an alligator but has a very different history. Recent research from the University of Florida has highlighted the growing presence of spectacled caimans throughout the Everglades. Scientists have found them living in canals, marshes, wetlands, and other freshwater habitats across South Florida. While they have not attracted the same level of public attention as invasive pythons, researchers are becoming increasingly concerned about their long-term impact on the environment. One important thing to understand is that these animals are not recent arrivals. The spectacled caiman is native to parts of Central and South America and was first brought into the United States through the exotic pet trade more than 60 years ago. Over time, some animals escaped or were released into the wild. By the 1980s, established breeding populations had already been documented in Florida. This means that the species has been present for decades. What has changed is the growing realization of just how widespread these animals have become and how seriously scientists now view their potential effects on native wildlife. Part of the problem is that many people do not recognize them when they see them. At first glance, a spectacled caiman can easily be mistaken for a young alligator. They share a similar body shape, olive-brown coloration, and long, powerful tails. However, there are several differences. Spectacled caimans are generally smaller than both American alligators and crocodiles, usually reaching between 6 and 8 feet in length, although some individuals can grow to around 2.5 meters. They have a shorter and broader snout than crocodiles, along with a heavily armored body covered in thick, bony plates. Their most distinctive feature is the ridge between their eyes, which resembles a pair of glasses and gives the species its name. The reason scientists are concerned is not simply because another predator has appeared in the swamp. The larger issue is that the Everglades ecosystem evolved without spectacled caimans. Every ecosystem depends on a delicate balance between predators, prey, and habitat. When a new predator is introduced, that balance can be disrupted in ways that are difficult to predict. Florida already struggles with invasive wildlife, and more than 60 species of non-native reptiles and amphibians now live in the state. Researchers have confirmed that Florida's spectacled caimans belong to 2 genetically distinct populations, showing that the species has become firmly established. Scientists worry that the growing caiman population could create additional challenges for the Everglades, especially as restoration efforts continue. The concern is not just about individual animals, but about what they represent. Another invasive predator competing within an ecosystem that is already under pressure. As billions of dollars are invested in restoring the Everglades, every new challenge makes that task more complicated. For researchers, the spectacled caiman serves as a reminder that restoring a damaged ecosystem is never as simple as putting things back the way they were, especially when new species have already become part of the landscape. Tracking a ghost in the water. Knowing a species is invasive is one thing. Actually, tracking it through hundreds of square miles of marsh, canal, and sawgrass is another problem entirely. Caimans don't exactly sit still for a head count. Researchers said they're tracking spectacled caimans to better understand how they move through the Everglades and what habitats they're using, with future work potentially including satellite tagging female caimans to locate nesting sites. Satellite tagging is usually reserved for animals scientists consider a serious long-term threat. It's expensive and labor-intensive. The fact that it's being floated for caimans tells you how seriously the state is starting to take this. It's not the only invasive predator getting this treatment. Burmese pythons remain the most famous swamp invader in Florida, and for good reason. Adult Burmese pythons caught in Florida average 6 to 9 feet long, but the largest one ever measured was 18 feet. In Florida, Burmese pythons have been found to prey on a wide variety of mammals, birds, reptiles, and even alligators, according to Florida Fish and Wildlife. This is why footage of a gator eating a python tends to go viral. It looks like nature balancing itself out. But one alligator eating one snake doesn't fix a population problem. The species can be captured and humanely killed year-round without a permit or hunting license across roughly 32 commission-managed lands in South Florida. That open invitation alone tells you how unmanageable the python population has become through normal means. Florida has actually turned this into public events. The Florida Python Challenge is an annual event where certified participants assist with invasive species removal in and around Everglades National Park, with an orientation video covering safety guidelines and essential rules for anyone joining the effort. Regular citizens, trained and certified, going out into the swamp specifically to remove an animal that doesn't belong there. That's not normal wildlife management, that's damage control. So, when new trail cam footage shows caimans expanding their range at the same time python removal events are scaling up year after year, you start to see the bigger picture. This isn't one bad sighting. It's a pattern of an ecosystem absorbing new predators faster than anyone can track them. The water itself is the problem. One of the biggest threats facing the Florida Everglades is something that rarely appears in dramatic wildlife footage. It is not an alligator, a python, or any other predator roaming through the swamp. In many ways, the greatest danger is the water itself. While trail cameras can capture images of animals moving through the wetlands, they cannot show the pollution that has been building beneath the surface for decades. Yet, this hidden problem may be causing more damage to the ecosystem than any single invasive species. Much of the historic Everglades has been affected by pollution from human activity. As cities expanded and agriculture grew across South Florida, large amounts of nutrients and contaminants entered the water system. Over time, substances such as phosphorus, nitrogen, and mercury accumulated throughout the wetlands. This did not happen overnight. The pollution seen today is the result of many decades of runoff from farms, urban development, and other sources that gradually altered the natural balance of the ecosystem. Mercury has been one of the most concerning pollutants. Scientists first reported unusually high mercury levels in Everglades wildlife as far back as 1974. Researchers found elevated concentrations in largemouth bass and other predatory fish, including fish living deep inside remote areas of Everglades National Park. What surprised many experts was that even locations far from major cities showed signs of contamination. Decades later, the problem still exists, and health officials continue to warn people about the risks. Today, the Florida Department of Health maintains fish consumption advisories throughout much of the Everglades. Women who may become pregnant and young children are advised not to eat largemouth bass over a certain size for many areas of the region. In Everglades National Park, the warning is even stricter, applying to all largemouth bass regardless of size. These advisories exist because mercury can accumulate in fish tissue over time, creating potential health risks for people who consume contaminated fish. The effects of mercury are not limited to fish. The contamination moves through the food chain and reaches other animals as well. Wading birds, which are among the most recognizable species in the Everglades, can absorb mercury through the prey they eat. Scientists often study feathers collected from these birds because mercury becomes deposited in growing feathers. By analyzing feather samples, researchers can track contamination levels and better understand how pollution is affecting wildlife populations over time. Another major issue involves nutrient pollution, particularly in Lake Okeechobee. For decades, excess phosphorus and nitrogen have flowed into the lake, creating ideal conditions for large blooms of blue-green algae, also known as cyanobacteria. These blooms can spread rapidly across the water and produce harmful toxins known as cyanotoxins. The toxins pose risks to people, pets, fish, and many other forms of aquatic life. When these algae blooms become dense, they block sunlight from reaching underwater plants such as seagrasses. As the plants die, oxygen levels in the water can drop, creating stressful conditions for fish and other aquatic animals. The blooms may also release unpleasant gases and dangerous toxins that further damage the environment. What begins as excess nutrients entering the water can eventually affect an entire ecosystem. The problem extends far beyond the boundaries of the Everglades. At times, water from Lake Okeechobee is released into nearby rivers and estuaries, carrying nutrient pollution with it. These releases can contribute to harmful algal outbreaks and worsen red tide events along Florida's coasts. Red tide is caused by a microscopic algae called Karenia brevis, which produces powerful toxins that can kill fish, harm marine mammals, and affect human health. Unlike an invasive predator, pollution does not have a face that people can easily recognize. It works quietly in the background, affecting fish, birds, plants, and entire food webs. While wildlife cameras capture the animals living in the swamp, they cannot capture the slow poisoning of the ecosystem's foundation. Yet, year after year, that hidden damage continues to shape the future of the Everglades. Decades of promises still falling short. If the water is this polluted, you'd assume someone's been trying to fix it. They have, for a very long time. The results, though, are complicated. Phosphorus from agricultural and stormwater runoff has degraded water quality in the Everglades since the 1960s, and the natural plant and animal communities the Everglades is known for developed under very low phosphorus conditions. High phosphorus levels in the Everglades cause real damage, including the loss of the natural algae communities that define the ecosystem, and changes in native plant communities that reduce the open water areas wading birds depend on to feed. By 1990, over 40,000 acres of the public Everglades were already estimated to be impacted. That's why the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan exists, often shortened to CERP. It is described as the largest wetland project in the history of the country, designed to restore and protect the Everglades, with billions of dollars going toward preserving the region. The scale of this thing is genuinely massive. But scale doesn't automatically mean success. Despite 4 decades of restoration efforts, environmental scientists warn that the slow progress on water quality jeopardizes the long-term health of this UNESCO World Heritage Site, even as state officials claim recent data shows pollution levels approaching acceptable limits. A more recent report put numbers behind that warning. Nutrient pollution, specifically phosphorus, flowing from treatment wetlands into protected areas of the Everglades actually rose between 2024 and 2025, in some cases dramatically. The oversight body that's been watching this for decades isn't optimistic either. The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine has issued biennial progress reports on Everglades restoration since 2004 under a congressional mandate, and in both 2022 and 2024, it found that only one stormwater treatment area was actually in compliance with the court-ordered pollution standard. Back in 2022, scientists already concluded that meeting that legal water quality standard by 2026 would be a significant challenge. There is a major project meant to help. The EIA reservoir is intended to help prevent future toxic algae outbreaks by reconnecting Lake Okeechobee with the Everglades sawgrass marshes to the south, restoring the historic flow of the River of Grass, and reducing the unnatural east-west discharges that threaten coastal estuaries with algae. But the timeline keeps slipping. A deal was struck to expedite construction of the $3.5 billion reservoir, but completion is now scheduled for 2029, years later than originally hoped. One of the Florida communities hit hardest by toxic algae has been Sewell's Point, roughly 43 miles north of West Palm Beach. There is a genuine bright spot worth mentioning, because this story isn't only bad news. Rain falling in the Everglades percolates through porous limestone and recharges the Biscayne Aquifer, which supplies drinking water for 1 in 3 Floridians, and 25 years of restoration work has measurably improved that drinking water for millions of people. The system is working, just unevenly, and slower than the pollution it's trying to outpace. What this footage actually tells us. When people hear about newly released footage from Florida's swamps, it is easy to imagine that the story revolves around one shocking discovery or one dangerous animal. However, the reality is much more complicated. Once you look beyond the dramatic headlines and viral social media posts, the footage reveals something far more important. It shows an ecosystem facing several different challenges at the same time. There is no single villain responsible for everything that is happening in the Everglades. Instead, there are multiple problems developing alongside a few encouraging successes, all occurring within the same landscape. One of the most positive discoveries involves the eastern indigo snake. Wildlife officials recently confirmed the presence of wild-born hatchlings, a finding that many researchers consider a major conservation achievement. The species had disappeared from large parts of South Florida decades ago, and bringing it back has required years of careful planning and restoration work. The appearance of naturally born hatchlings suggests that those efforts are beginning to succeed. For conservationists, this is exactly the kind of outcome they hoped to see. It demonstrates that restoration projects can make a real difference when they are given enough time and support. At the same time, the footage highlights another side of the story. While some native species are recovering, invasive species continue to expand their presence throughout the Everglades. One example is the spectacled caiman, a predator that was never supposed to be part of this ecosystem. Researchers are increasingly concerned about its growing population because every new predator can place additional pressure on native wildlife. The concern is not only about the caiman itself, but also about what it represents. It is another reminder that the Everglades is constantly being altered by species that evolved elsewhere and were introduced into an environment that was not prepared for them. Beyond the visible wildlife, there is another challenge that cameras cannot easily capture. The water flowing through the Everglades still carries the effects of decades of pollution. Excess nutrients, mercury contamination, and harmful algal blooms continue to affect the health of the ecosystem. Scientists have repeatedly warned that progress in solving these problems has been slower than many hoped. Because water is the foundation of the Everglades, any damage to its quality can eventually affect fish, birds, reptiles, mammals, and plant life across the entire region. There is also an important lesson about how people should interpret wildlife footage. Camera traps and field observations are valuable tools, but they only provide small pieces of a much larger picture. Conditions in wetlands can make images appear more dramatic than they actually are. Dense vegetation, poor lighting, reflections from water surfaces, and unusual camera angles can all create misleading impressions. A single photograph or video clip may attract attention, but it does not automatically prove that a crisis is unfolding. What matters more is the long-term evidence collected over many years. Scientists study water samples, animal populations, tracking data, habitat changes, and thousands of camera images before concluding. When the same patterns appear repeatedly across different studies, they become much harder to ignore. That is what makes the current situation significant. Researchers are not reacting to one unusual photograph. They are responding to years of evidence pointing in the same direction. The overall picture is one of constant change. Invasive caimans continue to spread into new areas. Burmese pythons are still being removed by the thousands. Pollution remains a persistent challenge, and major restoration projects continue to face delays. At the same time, thousands of volunteers are helping scientists classify millions of wildlife images, making it possible to monitor changes that would otherwise go unnoticed. The Everglades is not disappearing overnight, and many species continue to survive and even recover. However, the ecosystem is changing faster than many experts would like. The newly released footage does not tell a single story. Instead, it reveals several interconnected stories unfolding at once, all within the same waters of one of the world's most important wetland ecosystems. And that's where we'll leave it. The Florida swamps are still full of incredible wildlife, but the latest footage shows an ecosystem facing challenges from every direction, from invasive predators to pollution and habitat changes. The real story isn't one shocking video. It's the bigger picture that emerges when years of data are put together. If you enjoyed this deep exploration, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.